You're watching Deprogrammed. This is the New Culture Forum's latest show, devoted to fighting back against the forces of ideological conformity, particularly among the young. My name's Harrison Pitt, I'm a senior editor at the European Conservative, and I'm thrilled to be joined today, as ever, by Evan Riggs, who is a freelance journalist, and Freya India, our special guest today, freelance writer who's written for UnHerd, The Spectator, and the New Statesman. Now, Freya, there's a lot of fanfare at the moment about the new Barbie film. I will confess to not having seen it myself.
I've not seen it
Have you seen it?
No.
I think Evan has.
I have, yeah, guilty.
Yes. Well, we may get into it a bit more deeply, but there is a general fanfare around at the moment about trying to cast roles in films that will speak to female empowerment and that will inspire young women. Do you think that this is false, or that there is something to this idea?
I think with the Barbie movie, from what I've seen, it's kind of been positioned as a feminist movie. So from what I understand, is it about female empowerment, or it's got those themes within it?
To a degree, I found it was actually, like fairly nuanced. Though, Barbie kind of disappears in the back third of the movie and they make it all about the guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a bit interesting.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's kind of positioned as a feminist film, but from what I've seen, there's all this kind of beauty merchandise that's come from it, like Barbie makeup, all of the kind of Barbie outfits. So I don't really see how it's a feminist film when it's, it comes with all of the same beauty standards that feminists kind of rail against.
Yes, but is there a division within feminism on these sorts of points? Because one thing I've noticed is that sometimes, and this is something you've written about at some length as well, is that on the one hand you have the more misanthropic, certainly misandrist feminist types who think that women don't owe you pretty, beauty standards are a patriarchal construct and all the rest of it. But then you also get other sides of the ledger of the feminist movement who are very keen about selling these products as empowerment. And I think you've been more critical. I mean, I'm sure you're critical of the first type as well. But the second type is what you've written about in some depth.
I think that's kind of like the feminism that I grew up with from like the 2010s, which is like the empowerment is like a product or a procedure or a service that you can buy. So it will be like Botox is empowering now, or even like cosmetic surgery, like a Brazilian butt lift is now empowering. It's like a way to celebrate your body.
Yes, and those are supposed to have reasonably high
it's the highest
mortality rate.
I mean, it's not failure rates.
But not only failure rates in terms of how the damn thing looks, but people, because I think if you inject, because it's basically you're injecting fat into. Yeah,
it's really dangerous.
Yes, and if you go into a vein, then that can cause some serious trouble.
So that's obviously an extreme example, but any kind of consumerist choice is now labelled as empowering, and I think it's just an empty feminism that doesn't really serve women's well-being. It just serves kind of corporate profit-driven entities.
Do you think it positively harms young women's well-being?
Yeah, it seems to be that the things that are labelled empowering are things that harm women or kind of encourage women to act in ways that might act against their long-term interest. Whether that's cosmetic surgeries or kind of like the porn industry or even the pharmaceutical industry. They seem to be pushing things that ultimately, make them profit rather than serve our interests.
Do you think it's a false form of freedom? Because this is at the risk of getting a little bit too deep. I mean, there is a long-running debate in philosophy over what freedom really is. I mean, there are what you might call intellectualist accounts of freedom, and those accounts, the sort that Plato and Aristotle and St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas would subscribe to, the idea that freedom means fulfilling your nature maximally as a human being. So there's this idea that your own nature is a regulative ideal, whereas in the modern era, freedom tends to mean just doing whatever the hell you want, and that can often mean not only not cooperating with your nature or being true to your nature, but expressly militating and transgressing against your nature. And that seems to be exactly the kind of empowerment, exactly the form of liberation which is sold to all sorts of people today across a range of different dimensions, but especially to women. But I mean, do you think that this is really as dangerous as some of the more intelligent feminists will often make out? People like, was it Andrea Dworkin who wrote quite a lot about this? She wrote some quite insightful, despite being a bit of a misandrist herself. She wrote some very insightful essays about pornography and these sorts of things.
Yeah, I do find that the industries that are the most kind of egregious are the ones that are, wrapping up everything they're selling as freedom. It's always freedom. and it's not just that we're being sold things and they're labelled as freedom. It's like every behaviour can be kind of repackaged as empowering. So even I've written recently about kind of female infidelity is now, they're starting to kind of push that as empowering.
It's a great way to find yourself.
Yeah, like honestly, it's kind of becoming more mainstream.
Yes.
Like Cosmo magazine was saying, like, what you should do after you cheat. Number one was don't tell him. And there was like women's health. Was
where was this? Sorry, this was
Cosmo like a women's magazine.
Really,
yeah.
and this is will have a reasonably wide circulation.
Yeah.
Lots of people will read it online as well.
Yeah. Women's Health magazine saying why you shouldn't regret an affair.
Yes.
The Times was saying it might put a spring in your step to cheat.
Wasn't it the Call Her Daddy podcast that was selling a shirt that said cheat on him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's called Her Daddy?
It's a feminist podcast.
I see, and
it's got like 5 million viewers.
And you're one of them? for research
subscribers,
for research purposes.
No, not even. I don't put myself through that. But yeah,
I think there's something. I was reading one of your articles. It was this company or organization called Hers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like a deeply sort of cynical ploy. For those of you who don't know, they're packaging like Zoloft and other pharmaceuticals in like nice like pastels with like this great little kind of feminine chic branding, and basically selling it to these like girls and marketing it to the same people who like literally TikTok like generation of like this is kind of the way to it's totally normal to take pharmaceuticals, and B, it's also the best way to kind of like fully embody who you are. It's like the idea that you would need a chemical compound to be who you are as opposed to get away from it just seems to me completely ass backwards.
I mean, they say that they market their site as so chill, it's like shopping for leggings, not prescription drugs. Like that's literally the phrase they use. And they like will take things like the cardiovascular medication propranolol and say it will help you be a badass, or like it will help you if you're nervous for a big date. So it's like they're all marketed as like these lifestyle drugs to become a better version of you, rather than actually like a serious medication.
Why is it that it seems like in the 2020s now, like the default state, I think especially for women, is never just being like a normal person. Like it's like you have to be on birth control, you have to have an IUD, you have to be on Zoloft, you have to be going to therapy. Like you can't just like, not a woman obviously, but like you can't just be a girl. That is actually the aberration now.
I do think, it's kind of sounds very like feministy, the more I've looked into it, kind of criticizing feminism, I've looked into some of this stuff, and women's emotions are more medicalized and commodified than men's. It just seems that, they take our vulnerabilities and offer us solutions to them. Because if you've seen, there's Hers, but there's also Hims, the other website.
No, I haven't.
And that's like really practical stuff. It's like hair loss medication or erectile dysfunction medication. Whereas the women's website is like solutions to anxiety or social awkwardness, and it's prescription drugs. So it's like there is a big disparity between, how women's emotions are commodified for profit.
Do you think a lot of this is sort of like, I don't know, like philosophically downstream of the acceptance of the pill? Like in a way it is kind of a failure of the sexual revolution, because I forget who says this, but there's this quote of like, once the pill came about, the default state for sex went from not doing it, having a reason and needing a reason to have sex, to having no reason to say no. So you now, because you can't get pregnant, so now you need a you need a reason to say no. It totally reversed it, and so now it's like you don't need a reason to take a pill, you need a reason not to. All the way up to your brain chemistry.
Yeah, I think the pill is a great example of just how a serious drug can become a lifestyle choice. And there's huge profit in it. I think the global contraceptive pill market's worth like 28 billion. And if you look in the UK, there's a new brand called Hannah, which is like a contraceptive pill brand, and they ship it to your door without you seeing a doctor. And the advert is like, it's got a mum who's really stressed out, she's like losing control of her child, and then like this sexually liberated woman who's hooking up with people, and she's free and empowered. And you watch it and it's just like, this is a serious medication that has been linked to increased risk of suicide, depression, risk of different types of cancers, and it's just advertised as a way to kind of improve your life.
Yeah, but it also, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure you've certainly read much more about it than I have, but as well as having all those externalities, it also muddles with women's sense of who they're attracted to, doesn't it? And so it's apparently it's very common, particularly when women get into their 30s and they're willing to settle for a man who they maybe wouldn't have settled for in their mid-20s. Because they want to have children. As soon as they get off the pill in order to have children, they find him even more unattractive than they did when they settled for him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, isn't it, you find more feminine men attractive?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's
which explains why Justin Bieber was such a craze when I was growing up. Perhaps.
But yeah, it's like a serious change to your hormones. But I know so many young women who just went on the pill at like 13, 14 with no understanding of this. For things like to improve their skin or mood.
But also to be in a position where they, as Evan says, to be in a position where they were more liberated. But this is something that conservatives, I don't know. Would you call yourself a conservative?
Small c.
Small c conservative. Oh God, no! None of us here are big C conservatives. I wouldn't worry about that. But maybe it's something conservatives should talk more about, because Evan's right. It does completely alter the. What was
it's a total paradigm shift.
But what was the point that you were making about how all of the reasoning changes? All of a sudden, you need a reason to say no rather than a reason to say yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are reasons to say no to the pill, and we need and we should amass those and list those in greater detail, perhaps.
It's changing the chemical composition of our water supply. That's a big one. It's turning the frogs gay.
That's true.
Yes. Okay. We've got a bit Alex Jones there. Never mind.
Yeah. He was right.
About the frog gay.
That actually ended up being true.
Go on then. How was it true?
Well, they ended up doing studies on it, and they were like literally turning like frogs into hermaphrodites because there was too much estrogen in the water. He was Alex Jones was right on that one issue.
He does have a way of undercutting the plausibility of his own messages by screaming at the camera and throwing papers in the air. But yeah, I'm sure that is true. I won't contest him on that. One of the peculiar things that I've noticed about our culture is that young women are encouraged to take on the very worst traits that are ascribed to men under the banner of toxic masculinity. Yet when women are encouraged to do it, all of a sudden it's liberation, it's empowerment, and all the rest of it. What do you think is driving this, and why do you think so many young women appear to be receptive to this messaging?
I think it's almost a backlash to what they perceive as toxic masculinity. So they might have encountered men in their lives who have had these traits where they're kind of promiscuous, aggressive, maybe hyper independent. And I think the kind of reasoning behind it is to flip that, and we will be like that back. We'll be as emotionally detached and kind of sleep around and kind of act like the very worst men.
Yes.
So I think it's almost taking that power back.
I see. They regard it as a sort of necessity.
Almost a vengeful kind of, we'll just reclaim those traits.
Yeah. What kind of a society do you think they envision resulting from this interminable zero-sum battle of the sexes, where on the one side has all these wretched traits, and apparently, and one side is conditioned to have all these wretched traits by our culture, so we're going to imitate all those wretched traits and just see how it all works out. I mean, what's their long-term game? To the extent that they think about it, maybe they don't.
It's a very short-term vision. It's just kind of like, I almost think it's a way to get through this kind of sexualized dating market we have now. Like the way to handle some of that is maybe to be a bit more toxically masculine. To put on this front.
This is the problem. It's like we're ending up in some sort of Brave New World scenario where like women are becoming men and men are becoming more like women, and everybody's taking drugs. But at least in Brave New World, people were fucking.
We're having less sex than ever.
The natalism thing was sorted out. It was just incredibly regimented in Brave New World. But there's no risk of the Brave New World dystopia falling below replacement rate as we are. But why do you think people are having less sex? And is this on one level, is this to be celebrated? Because sex isn't like tennis; it's actually a bit of a blood sport, and it can cause it can cause real problems. Because I think what I think we should be encouraging is lots of sex, but within stable,
meaningful,
marital, if possible, sacred frameworks. But why do you think people are having less sex, and should we worry?
I think it's a lot of things. I think I don't worry too much about that. I don't think that's like you said. I don't think if that means less casual sex, where a lot of women may be doing it because they think that they should, then that's not a bad thing. I think a lot of it is online porn for guys.
Yes.
And for girls, I think there's a lot of risk aversion, anxiety around relationships, and these two things are kind of coming together. And my generation, we're just less likely to form those relationships. Yeah, I think a big part is you can just get gratification online.
That's definitely a big part for men, and it completely disincentivizes any. Yeah. It completely takes the incentive away from you to make yourself appealing to women. Obviously, many men will still want to do that. Yeah. But more of them will settle for the pixelated images of naked women on the screen.
But also, to find the average woman appealing when you've been inundated with kind of these crazy
idealized mannerisms.
Hypernormal stimuli.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. So the average woman then is not attractive because it's completely, compared to that stimuli, it just doesn't excite you the same.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know, I've never really bought this argument, even though I think that porn should be illegal for many reasons. But I don't actually. I mean, do you really think so, Harrison? Do you really think that there are lots of, I don't watch porn, but do you think that there are lots of guys who are satisfied with just that?
I don't think they're satisfied with it.
It seems to me instinctually off.
Certainly, but I don't. So the point is, I don't think they're necessarily satisfied with that. Would be the wrong way of putting it, because that would suggest that they achieve some form of lasting positive fulfillment from it. But I think what they are willing to do, in the same way that many women in their early 30s, it's not that they're satisfied with the man who's not quite as good in their eyes as they could have got when they were in their mid-20s. It's just that they are willing to settle for it, and so it conditions you. I think Jordan Peterson's phrased it like this once. It conditions your body in physiological terms precisely because you are getting that sexual gratification. Mechanically, the same thing is going on as would be going on in sexual intercourse, because your body thinks it's getting that regularly. Yeah. Your body thinks you're King Solomon with 300 concubines, and you think, but up here that you're bloody well not even coming close to King Solomon, and therefore there's a sort of, it creates a division in men. I think
it's kind
of isn't healthy in the long term.
It's kind of like social media. If you're lonely and anxious and you kind of talk to people online, it's not necessarily satisfying you the same, but it's quick and it's convenient, and you can get that kind of hit of connection.
Did you see the thing about Replica?
Yes,
the AI girlfriend. I think that's actually even even more terrifying, because when they took off, they turned down Replica's ability to kind of sext you back. There was tons of guys on Twitter who were flipping out. It's an AI chatbot that was it was
slightly insulted insulted that you thought I knew what it was. But
this is big news. It's an AI chatbot, and it would pretend to be your friend or your girlfriend. And then what happened was 100,000 guys or probably more signed up and were basically just sexting this thing nonstop. And so the creator of it was I'm a bit uncomfortable looking at the data of what's coming through from my friendly AI bot. So we're gonna turn that aspect down. And a bunch of guys online lost their minds, and they were you've killed my girlfriend. And I was just I'm worried because I mean that guy had kind of a conscience and didn't want to do it. Yeah. But I mean, if I was a less scrupulous actor, I would just
turn it up.
Copy the bot.
Turn it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But that shows how lonely men are, because I think that the fact they like an AI chatbot who can actually talk to them and maybe connect with, even if it's sexting, it's a bit more, it just shows it's not like porn, it's they want to talk to someone and get a response.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's kind of sad there's a demand for
I think that will end up being way more potent in the long run. I don't think we have any idea how to what are we going to do, turn off AI? It's not going to work.
But how do you account for the fact that you as a young girl managed to resist all of these pressures that were bearing down of you, and how do you think we might encourage others to slip the net as you seem to have done?
I think I put a lot of it down to personality. I'm just more introverted, so I think I've spent kind of more time alone, which helps to kind of reflect on all these things and just thinking about what actually makes me happy. And so when I try and write about it, it's I'm never telling young girls this is what you should do or this is what you should avoid, because I don't really think that works. I think it's more about taking that time away to think about you as a person and how it is affecting you. And I think there's a lot of conservatives trying to help girls and young women, but they're really just not going to listen to someone lecturing them about morals. They're just not. And I think it has to come from a place of how do you feel when you engage in this behaviour? How do you feel when you put your self-worth into this? And just encouraging girls to take more time to think about it, outside of the whole cultural forces.
It's very interesting. I very recently, this is American, but it certainly has import here. There's a very well-known sort of red pill online podcast. You're probably aware of it, Evan. There certainly is, I think, called the Whatever podcast.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And very recently, I actually tuned in because Lila Rose, who is a pro-life Catholic activist woman in the United States, was on with some of these more Meninist, neo-pagan, will to power types.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because they were also there with lots of OnlyFans models, and so it was a real gathering.
Menagerie. Yeah.
Real menagerie, yeah. And whereas the typical move of the Meninist type is to say, women turn to dust when they're 25, and they completely lose all value. And if they've had 40 bodies, meaning if they've had sex with 40 different people, like, oh my God, they've certainly lost their value and all the rest of it. Lila Rose's attack, and this may partly be because she was a woman, but I think it's also because she's informed by a Catholic understanding of what truly makes the human person flourish. She said, I think that you're infinitely more valuable than your profession, and that's why you shouldn't be doing it. She adopted that tact.
Yes, yeah.
Which maybe that's something that conservatives need to do better, less of the strong arming and more. I don't know. I mean, how would you phrase it?
More compassion for the world we've grown up in and the cultural, technological, commercial forces. Bombarding us with the same messages all the time.
Yeah.
If young women do grow up and sleep with a lot of people, or they act in ways that conservatives might disagree with, I think it's more looking at the culture that has led to that, rather than
blaming the individual.
Taking some OnlyFans girl and just using her for clickbait online. I don't think that's productive. And I also think with things like OnlyFans, like, you have to look at girls' childhoods now. We grow up commodifying ourselves on Instagram, but that's been normal our whole throughout our teenage years. Social media rewards more sexualized content, and so is it any surprise that young women are turning to OnlyFans? I think we've got to have more of a where did this come from, rather than what's wrong with women.
Yes. And okay, yeah, and in many ways that's a very conservative way of looking at things, because conservatives, it was Aristotle who said man is by nature a political animal, and by that he didn't mean that we stay up late at night watching by-election results. He meant that we imbibe the influence of our political community, and that is primarily what forms us. We don't come out of the womb fully formed as individuals, and then pursue our own self-actualization. We are formed within a communal context, so paying attention to that context rather than its individual symptoms.
I don't think going after individual people and their choices will work.
But do you think it's a particular? Well, then I don't know about that though, because is that more of a? So, in the main, we should always pay attention to the culture, because as we've just established, it goes a huge way to forming the individual's outlook on life. But do you think there might be a genuine division between the sexes here, and that you probably can be a little bit tougher with men and to try and awaken them from their slumber? I think this partly accounts for the success of someone like Jordan Peterson on the wholesome end of it, and someone like Andrew Tate on the less wholesome end of it. Is that he is actually saying, look, you're a bum. Like, do some things. Like, go in the gym. Like, stand up straight. Tidy your room. All the rest of it. It is men. I think men do hunger for that kind of
I agree.
command structure, whereas women, perhaps in general, again we're talking in general, need a little more.
Yeah, we don't like that. You have to be softer. No, I think
that's what I've been doing wrong.
I think there's obviously value in that, and when I write, I try and be straight talking. Like, it's not like I'm dancing around everything, being really coddling to young women. Like, it is a bit like, wake up and look at this. But I just think I'm more talking about the content online that uses the division between men and women to generate more content, which then divides us even more. And I just think you just get lost in kind of blaming both genders, and then we just get further apart.
Yeah, the only thing that sells better than sex is us versus them, and now we can do both at the same time.
Yes.
If I can ask you a question about anxiety, I know people often like to talk about social media and how this is causing, tons of young people to have all sort of neuroses. I have a funny feeling, and this is not something I've heard anybody talk about, is that, every generation kind of compares and contrasts itself to the one that came before it.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of Gen Z girls are seeing basically what happened to the millennials, and they're seeing kind of the first wave of women who hit like 35, no kids, no husband, and like how that's turning out for them, worrying that same sort of trend line or culture is going to impact them as well, and are like deathly afraid of what's coming. And then also there's like climate alarmism and all this stuff. And we're terrifying people of the future. But I think too, when we talk about Gen Z, we have to remember that there are like 26-year-old Gen Zers now. Like it's a young generation, but it's not 16-year-olds, it's not teenagers. So there's another generation that's coming up after that we haven't even.
What are they going to be called?
Alpha.
I feel like that name probably won't stick.
It probably will seem very incongruous.
Yeah, generations are always kind of affirmous until they're kind of long gone. Do you think that like very young girls, like 14-year-old girls, are looking at this sort of escalating trend line and these escalating fears that are getting pitched to them, and trying to almost do like a not a feminine Andrew Tate style like revenge of the sex, like bully them back in to civil partnerships kind of maneuver, but are taking lessons from what basically was the red pill or the manosphere, and then kind of flipping it back onto men? I feel like we're seeing a rise of, in a sense, like kind of like highly Machiavellian young women.
Yeah, well, there's, like we said before, the kind of toxic masculinity is now kind of repackaged as girl power. I do notice, I think they're inundated with this content of like the Andrew Tate, the kind of manosphere influences, and as well millennial women talking about the negatives of marriage, the kind of deterring them from relationships maybe and commitment. And I do think that will lead to a backlash of, like you said, young women. There was that influencer talking about how to manipulate men, the female Andrew Tate.
How to receive princess treatment.
Yeah. So I think...
Tell our viewers what that was.
It was some girl going on a rant to a camera for like 30 minutes about how to like manipulate men into like buying you the right type of bag, and like how to... basically, I think we went from like kind of Gen X millennial, like Sex and the City, like female empowerment, but it's all very kind of like above board, like we can have sex like men. And then we went into like a period of anxiety that we're now in with Gen Z, which is basically like, that actually looks terrifying now that I'm seeing the repercussions. Like it was fun in the late 90s, but now where are you? I don't want this to happen to me. And then I think we're seeing the younger cusp of Gen Z and the upcoming teenage girls look at that and say, kind of like men are doing now, I'm going to do everything and I'm in my power, up to like intentionally sort of manipulating men to make sure that I have like a stable providing husband that will buy me the right bag.
I think that would be the women on social media, though. I think that like social media amplifies the people who are the most narcissistic, extreme, the most extreme voices.
But it is also where young people spend most of their time.
But exactly, 10.6 hours a day online or something like that. So
you're not on social media, are you?
Not on Instagram.
I only know because I was trying to do research for this, and I was like impossible to find you.
Yeah, no.
Do you find that difficult?
No.
Do people think you're weird for it?
When you say you're not on social media, so you are on Twitter as Freya.
I'm on Twitter.
But you're not on. But you're not on Instagram. Is it this?
No. So career-wise, I'm on it, but nothing personal.
I see.
And no, I don't find it difficult. I think it's just my personality type. I just have less of an interest of what everyone's doing.
Would you recommend that other people log off, touch grass?
Well, it's some of my friends I talk to.
Yes.
Easy. That was a layup.
It's an open goal.
Well, I do think it's personality dependent. Like I have friends who they're so extroverted and confident and self-assured, and Instagram.
Go rock climbing then. Go to the countryside. Like go and hang out with people.
But
there are other ways to be extroverted.
Them posting on Instagram doesn't affect them, or scrolling through stuff.
I'm charitable.
Whereas, it does affect me. So I think for people with kind of who are more introverted or maybe more vulnerable to negative emotion shouldn't be on those platforms. I would just say don't go on it. It's not worth it. But some people get away with it and love it and don't see a problem.
Yeah, I think it's ruining my attention span. It's not
Yeah,
great.
that as well.
Twitter's nuking my brain.
Why are you hesitant to tell women what to do? Because it's, I mean, I find it easy, but I mean, but genuinely, because you do think about these things a lot. Your introversion is a strength in that respect.
Yeah.
You do research on these things. I'm not saying that you should be hectoring and lecturing and all the rest of it, but why are you hesitant not to say, look, I think that this is in general a better path to pursue?
I think I would say it's a better path to pursue, but I think it's one of those things that we're in the modern world now, and there's no kind of getting out of it. And there are incentives to have social media. There are, a lot of things in modern life that have changed, which means that, maybe the best thing for your well-being, it conflicts with other things in modern life. And I do think there is a space for, you can enjoy technology, you can enjoy some of the benefits, but it comes down to the individual, like knowing yourself, how it affects your individual mental health. Because,
of course,
in my experience of, young women my age, there are people who spend a lot of time on social media and don't seem affected, or kind of caught up in this culture, and they have a personality that kind of protects them from it. And I do think that's true. But, for most girls and young women, I would say, spend less time on social media or delete it.
Yeah, well, Freya, it's been a real privilege having you on Deprogrammed. You're a sane voice in a world drunk with delirium, so it's very good. And Evan, thank you as ever. You've been watching Deprogrammed. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment if you wish, and we shall see you on the next one.
Hello. If you're enjoying the New Culture Forum channel and you believe in our mission, may I invite you to join our membership scheme at the link below or on our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Our work is more important now than ever, and we have great plans ahead for the future, but we can't do it without your support. From as little as £3 per month, you can help ensure that we continue on our mission. As a member, you'll receive a range of benefits, including access to exclusive content, invitations to our private events, including here at our studios, free copies of our books, and much, much more, including, of course, our famous NCF mug. If you aren't able to become a member, then please help us by clicking this button and subscribing to our channel. It's completely free. Just remember to also click the bell icon so that you can get notifications when we post new videos. Thank you.